Well, we are going to be starting a new series on the book of Ephesians, which was written to the town of Ephesus, city of Ephesus. The thing is, this week I was on vacation, and to be honest, I'm one of those people who got less than 6 hours sleep last night. And so this morning, I just wasn't able to prepare a sermon. And so I thought we could just, sing some more songs like that. But then I thought, you know what, I know a guy. He's from Ephesus, and I thought he'd be the best one to let you know all about his town and her city. So I'm going to get him. He's backstage. I'll be back in a sec, or he'll be back in a sec. Well, good morning. Happy New Year to you. Rob told me that he needed some help this morning, so I thought I'd come down and talk to you a little bit. I spent some time checking out your town this weekend. It's nice. A little snowy. I'm sure in the summer it's cute. I figure it's kind of a nice, quaint, small, tiny little town. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you. I hope I'm not offending you by calling your town small. It is. But you see, I come from a city. A huge city. It's the second biggest city in the entire empire. 500,000 people. A city called Ephesus. You've probably heard of it. No? You guys are missing out. I mean, we have a library that you would not believe. And our bathhouses, yeah, that's right, bathhouses, as in more than one. They're incredible. We have these aqueducts. They bring the water, it's perfect. One of the most impressive things of all is our theater. 25,000 people in our theater. Just to give you some context, you could take your entire town and half the neighboring town and come to our theater. But I'm sure I don't have to tell you what we're most famous for. The temple. The temple. The temple of Artemis? No? Okay, I am in a small town. All right, let me explain it to you. The temple of Artemis was one of the 7 wonders of the world. A historian named Antipater saw all 7 of them, and he said, the temple of Artemis blew the others away, or something to that effect. Wait a minute. You guys have heard of Artemis, right? Okay, a few of you have. That's good. For those who haven't, let me explain some things. Let's see. You know about Zeus? Apollo? Some of these names ringing a bell? Okay. Let's see. Zeus was like the king god. And he had a wife named Hera. And they had lots of children together. All these little gods and goddesses. But Zeus wasn't always faithful. And sometimes he would have kids with others. Sometimes with humans. You guys have heard of Hercules. That's one of them. Well, Artemis was one of Zeus's kids, but not one of Hera's kids. And that caused trouble for Artemis. Hera did everything she could to cause trouble for Artemis. It was a big mess. But I guess that's family, isn't it? Or so I've heard. See, I've never really experienced that myself. No one was really sure who Dad was, and Mom, well, let's just say that from a pretty early age, I was on my own. It was fine. I mean, I did what I had to. I got by. Wasn't easy. Back to Artemis. All right. The reason that she was so loved by the people of Ephesus is that she sent an image of herself down to the people of Ephesus. I mean, have you ever heard of anything like that before? A God sending an image of themselves down for the people to worship? The image she sent, it was carved in stone. I mean, you heard stories about it. You had to think it was just this most beautiful thing. It's been there for centuries. And I'm sure you're wondering the same thing that I wonder. If it's been there for centuries, how do we know that it actually came from Artemis? How do we know it wasn't just carved by some stone cutter? How do we know its origin? Well, we don't. I mean, that's just what we were taught. It's just what we believe. Honestly, I've always had a bit of an issue with it. Ever since I came to Ephesus. That's right. See, I love my city, but I wasn't born there. Now, my earliest memories come from a place called Ankara. I was there for a while, and then, like I said, I did what I had to do to get by, and sooner or later, that catches up to you, and it's best to move on. And so I've been all over the place, town after town, city after city, looking for something. I wasn't sure what, but just this sense of something more. The sense of belonging. The idea that if you disappeared, someone would miss you. I guess I was looking for family. And it brought me to Ephesus. This city, it's like a star. It has its own gravity. It just pulls you in closer and closer. This place is amazing. I didn't plan to stay here. I figured I would work for a little while, make some money, earn my way onto a ship, and move on to the next place. I wanted to go somewhere where I could make a difference. And Ephesus is it's too big for that. One man can't make a difference here. It's like stepping into a river, a raging river. You can't redirect it. All you can try to do is stay afloat, not get swept away. So I came to Ephesus, and the first place I went to was the theater. I mean, I'd heard about the theater, and I was amazed by how big it was. I'd never seen anything like it before. But then I had to go and see the temple. This place that was more impressive than any of the other ancient wonders. And so I made my way to the temple, and it was impressive. It was beautiful. It was the most incredible building that you could ever imagine. I'd never seen anything like it. No one had ever seen anything like it. I could have sat there and stared at it all day long. But then I thought, I have to go inside. I mean, if the people of this city have made this beautiful temple to house this image that Artemis sent herself, how much more amazing must this image be? And so I went into the temple, and I was so disappointed. It was just this hunk of rock that looked vaguely like a woman. I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd heard, everything I'd looked forward to, and it was so disappointing. I actually got angry. I started to leave, and that is when I saw the real treasure in the temple. All these shrines and statues, these beautiful, intricate works of art made to honor the goddess. But on their own, they were unbelievable. I had never seen anything like it. The craftsmanship. I couldn't understand how someone could take the metal and bend it in such a way to bring it alive. And so I went up and held one in my hands. I just needed to touch it, to feel the lines. And almost immediately I was overwhelmed with an urge to have it. Not to sell it, but just to have it with me so I could look at it anytime I wanted to. So I looked around. I had no money to pay for this. I palmed it. You learn these things after a while. Very slowly put it into my cloak. And that's when I felt the arm grab me. I tried to twist away, but it was like iron. Would not let go. I'd been caught. So I turned up to look at my captor, and I was surprised to see not anger, but a smile. He said, "Do you see anything you like?" I said, "They're all so beautiful." I couldn't believe how lucky I was. He hadn't seen me pocket it. And he looked at me and he said, "But which one will you buy?" I told him, I said, "I have no money. I couldn't afford to buy any of them, but their beauty will last with me forever." He told me. He said, "I will teach you how to make these. And in time, you will earn enough money to pay for the one you just stole." I was caught. But I was intrigued by his offer. I was surprised by it. I thought for sure he would have me thrown in jail, but nothing at all. He said that he saw in my eyes the appreciation for it. He knew that I would make the perfect apprentice. His name was Demetrius. He was a good man. A great teacher. He taught me everything I know, but not everything he knows, I think. He would always say, "There's always more to learn," whenever I thought I had mastered something. I loved the work. I loved creating. I mean, at first I wasn't very good at it, of course, but I learned more and more, and I loved creating these beautiful images. My masterpieces, I would call them. Dimitri didn't like that. He said, "You're not a master. How can you have a masterpiece? I'm the master. You are the apprentice." And so I stayed. And I discovered the thing that I had been looking for without realizing it, a sense of belonging, a family. And it wasn't just with Demetrius, it was with the entire guild, all the silversmiths. It's like we were a brotherhood. In fact, it extended to the other guilds as well. People who worked with copper, people who worked with stone. We were like one big family. All you had to do was get in, and you had a place. People who would miss you if you were gone. It was a family. Well, I wish I could say that's how the story ended. But it never ends that way, does it? There was this one time, Alexander, the coppersmith, he got everyone riled up because another group of coppersmiths had moved into town, not part of the guild, and they started selling their stuff. So he got his entire guild, he got all our entire guild. The brotherhood came crashing down on these people. We kicked them out of town. It was beautiful. Not for them, of course, but for us. Just this feeling of a family, a feeling of belonging, a feeling like we knew who we were. There was one group, though. They weren't part of the guilds. I wouldn't say I had a problem with them so much as they had a problem with everyone else. The Jews. They had specific ways of dressing, acting, eating, all these different rules. I did my best to try to avoid them, which was easy because they didn't want to have anything to do with the rest of us. I didn't understand them. I didn't understand their rules, their religion. I didn't understand how they could put such faith in something that apparently happened so long ago. It's like that image of Artemis. How do we know where it came from? How do we know it wasn't just something someone made up and passed down from generation to generation? How did we know that it actually came from one of the gods? Well, the Jews had a problem. A troublemaker was coming to town. Alexander told me about him. He was one of the Jews. He was okay, though. I mean, he was one of us after all. A man had come to town, something to do with a new sect, a new type of Judaism. Except for Alexander said to me, he is not really a Jew. And I told him, I said, I really don't care. And I didn't. I had no interest in religion. But Alexander, he got so mad about this guy. The man's name was Paul. And he was coming and speaking. And every time Alexander went, he would come back more and more angry. Until finally, one day, they kicked him out of the synagogue. They kicked Paul out of the synagogue. And he went and he spoke in one of the local areas. And that's when Demetrius started to go. My mentor. And he would go, and he would also get more and more angry every time he heard the man. And I kept telling him, I said, stop going. And he said, no, this is important. I need to understand. I need to know what he's talking about, because it's going to affect all of us. Again, I didn't care. I wasn't interested. All I wanted to do was work on my masterpieces, even though he wouldn't let me call them that. Well, one day Demetrius had enough. The man Paul had started saying things against Artemis. He said that gods created by human hands were not worthy to be worshipped, and that was just a step too far for Demetrius. And so he got the brotherhood going. He got all the silversmiths up in arms. They started chanting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" I tried to talk to him, but "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" I tried to explain, but "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" They wouldn't listen to anything. They just kept chanting that over and over again. And eventually all the other guilds joined with them. They grabbed some of Paul's friends and they made their way to the theater, a whole mob of them. I started chanting as well because I didn't want them to get mad at me. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. I was so worried about what was going to happen. I didn't want to have any part of it, and so I slowly but surely made my way to the edge of the crowd. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. And I ran back to my workplace. See, there was something Demetrius said that worried me. I didn't care about the religion. I didn't care about any of that. I didn't even care about Artemis. But Demetrius explained that what this man was saying was going to cost Artemis her followers, which meant it was going to cost us our livelihood. I'd searched from place to place to look for meaning in my life, a place where I belonged, and I finally found it. And now this man, Paul, was speaking in such a way that it was risking all of that. I thought maybe if I could speak to him, if I could explain to him what it meant to me, if I could show him what we were making, it might convince him to leave us alone. And so I took my best piece, my absolute masterpiece. The greatest thing, it was my baby, the greatest thing I had ever made. I never would have sold it, but I thought if this we'll get rid of him. I'll give it to him and send him on his way. And I looked all over for him, and I finally found him outside the theater trying to get in. He saw me coming towards him. He saw what I had in my hand. And at first he looked angry. I couldn't understand that. But then his face changed when he saw my eyes. His face changed to compassion and even sadness. I was overcome with emotion. I tried to talk to him. I tried to give it to him. I tried to explain it. I couldn't even speak. I just held it out to him. And he looked at it. My masterpiece. And he looked at me. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "You are God's masterpiece. You are God's masterpiece." And he turned and he walked away. I had no idea what to say. It wasn't even so much what he said, it was as much the way he said it. Different. So different from everything else that was going on. Demetrius and the guild were shouting in anger, but he said this thing in love, and it was that more than anything else that convinced me of the truth of it. It drowned out everything else. There was something different about this man. I realized here was a man who could actually make a difference. Here was a man who could stand in the river and divert it. There was something different about him. And so I followed. And I asked him the one question that had always bothered me, the thing that had always kept me from taking any steps further when it came to religion. And I said, "How do you know? How do you know it's true? How do you know it wasn't just handed down from generation to generation?" And he talked to me about a man named Jesus. A man that he had met. He spoke to him. A man who revealed a plan for his life, a purpose for his life. And then he said something that changed my life. He said, "I was created for a purpose too. Created to be a part of God's family, to do his works." He told me that I was far from God, but because of Jesus, I could finally come close to him. I was loved by Jesus. Loved more than I could ever possibly imagine. It changed my life. I joined Paul's church. It cost me my job, obviously, as a silversmith. I couldn't go back. But now I came to realize that the silversmiths and all the people of Ephesus, they worship an image that they believe was sent to them by the gods. But I worship a God that came to earth himself. And then was raised up to the highest heights. I don't make sculptures of Artemis anymore, but I follow the master sculptor. The one who makes his church fit together perfectly with individual masterpieces. The Temple of Artemis is a beautiful building. But I know that one day it's going to fall. And God is building his own temple, built on the foundations of men like Paul, the apostles, with Jesus as the cornerstone, and it will never fall. And it is more beautiful than a building made of rocks could ever be, because it's made by the master, the ultimate master. Every stone he puts in place is a masterpiece. I used to settle for fitting in. In fact, it was all I ever wanted. But now Jesus has given me a purpose. My purpose is to live a life worthy of this calling. And that's your purpose too. To live your life in such a way that every single person we meet throughout the world, we are telling them, with our words and with our deeds, you are God's masterpiece.